Dog fans, welcome to Hunker Down, Impact Media's weekly dive through the hedges into the world of those guys up there, the Georgia Bulldogs, or those guys over there, the
Yep.
Georgia Bulldogs. He's Jake Skinner. I'm Jeremy York. We are here to talk a little less of last week, a little bit more of this week, and if we have time, a little of what's after this, because this week's going to have a lot to do with what's after this for the Bulldogs. So, Jake, where do you want to start?
We'll go ahead and start it off with last week against UMass. Boy, it sucks when your defense decides not to wake up for an entire half. Your offense was awake, dogs. I mean, they played great. I unfortunately was busy all day, didn't get a chance to watch it live, so I've gone back and
That's
stared at
what
the
I had to do. Yep.
highlights. From what I saw, what I've been reading from people who I get talked to, we definitely played really good football. The offense was ready. They felt like they were looser. They looked good. Um, really just didn't. I didn't see too bad. I mean, Nate Frazier, that is a dude at running back. Is where I'm going to start on this one. 21 carries, 136 yards, three touchdowns, and that juke cut move of his is unreal. And like when he's running, he is lightning. We got ourselves a stud at running back. Glad to hear it. Glad to see that. Bowens looked good on his 5 carries.
Hmm.
Dwight Phillips on that end around, that I was loving seeing. Like that was fun to watch. I hope we can use some more of that. Like the formations we used to get the ball out of Carson's hand. I mean, it was shades of KC, shades of old school military school. Like you got two tight ends in the back, running,
Yeah.
a running back, and they got a receiver or two, and then all of a sudden you're throwing or passing, you don't know what's going to happen. Is it simplistic? Very, but that's the whole point: is disguising what you're going to do. So offense held up their own. There's not a whole lot to talk about on them. Arian had a good game on his 3 targets, 3 receptions. Lucky did all right. I mean, we saw people make some plays. We missed some guys. I think there's some injuries.
Yeah.
Potentially we're going to be getting 2 guys back, or at least 2 guys back next game. Dismissed wide receiver Colby Young might be back on the team.
Hmm.
He's back at practice. The Title IX board at UGA cleared him after charges were dropped, and it turns out the story was false, or at least altered from what really happened. We won't
We
stay
hope
long
that's
on
the case.
this.
We'll
We
put
hope
it
that's
that
the
way.
case.
That
Yeah, we hope that's the
us,
case. Whatever happens,
us
just
in general, and Impact Media in general, we're going to hope that was the case. Was that
yeah,
he was just falsely accused, and it came out in the wash.
right. So at least that he posted the picture that he was back because he had cleaned out his locker, from what I understand, and was prepared to be dismissed. He was not dismissed completely, but it was like a privately, like you could still have access to things, but you're not on the team as of right now. Like quite, we'll just wait until pending an investigation, and it turns out the investigation cleared him. So having Colby Young back, he will not be back for the Tech game, but he should be back for the SEC championship because he will need a week or two to ramp up. He's hopefully been staying close by, staying practicing. So having him back will be huge. Hopefully he's healed up. Be very helpful. But yeah, we looked good on offense. I don't think UMass could really handle us. I mean, 59 points in a full game. That's the kind of season Georgia's been wanting every game this year.
Yeah.
Um, Carson looked good. He had a fumble, but I mean, we got to do better on offensive line still. Our guys played good, but when you allow your quarterback to get blown up in the fourth because your defense can't keep the other team from scoring, and
Yeah.
we should have been running guys out there sooner, but hey, it is what it is. I'll be kind of glad to see some of the guys gone. No offense to them. A lot of Georgia fans will be happy to see a few people graduate or transfer. But defensively, like I told you earlier today, like it's sad when your starters can't get up for this game. Your
Yeah.
backups are hungrier than your starters, and that's an issue
Hmm.
for some teams. Georgia's having it right now. Hopefully that can be fixed. I think they'll wake up for the Tech game. I don't think that'll
I
be a
hope.
problem. They every time there's been a big game, with the exception of Ole Miss, and I think that was partly the offense because the defense did play really good. They played very well on bend but don't break on that one. Besides a few touchdowns, I mean, if your offense has been playing any decent, then you win the Ole Miss game. In the Bama game, they got punched. Offense couldn't do anything, and they were just tired. Then they woke up, and Bama couldn't do anything until the end of the game. Our cornerbacks killing us. Daniel Harris and Julian Humphrey both. I mean, at this point, you got to run out E-Rob, Ellis Robinson the fourth. You got to just because those two guys, one week one of them wants it, the next week the other he doesn't, and they flip flop. At some
Yeah,
point, just go out there with a true freshman, let him learn the hard way, because
yeah,
bet he catches on faster than anyone else because he flips the hips and like goes after the ball like nobody else does. So
yeah,
time to switch to him. Those other two may transfer, and if that's the case, that's the breaks. I mean, you do what you got to. Yes, competition's great, but I just you're hurting there. Defensive line did have a push, but they were just slow. Like they were jogging after they missed a tackle. Like our buddy Chaz, he gets sucked in that whole game. He just forgot how to play edge. The whole game he
yeah.
forgot. Like
Oh, he had some
nobody
moments,
looked.
and I'm not defending him on that, but he had some moments where I was like, yeah, he's due for another big game. He's starting to. You can see it start to click, and then like you said, him and a lot of his other compadres on that defensive side just it's like they're like, well, this could be good enough. We're gonna just let what we've done
Mhm.
already speak for the rest of the game. And unfortunately, football does not work that way.
No, it doesn't. And this is what happens when you play a noon kickoff fall.
Yeah,
It doesn't work. And like Chaz, yeah, had two tackles, but he missed a few. I give him credit. There was one touchdown that UMass had where he was literally getting blocked in the back and held, and he still was going
yeah,
trying to get off the ground. But UMass
yeah,
was just guy was pinning him. There were some missed calls in this game for sure. But I got to give credit to Gabe Harris, that dude is a beast. He looked good coming off the line. He's like shot out of a cannon. Him, Brinson, and Michael looked really good.
yeah,
They played good ball. Dalen Everett played really good game. Chris Cole had a fumble return for a touchdown, and the dude is a freak. Um, like how many? I'm pulling this up. How many linebackers out there? This guy's 6'3", 235, and with the speed. Like, yeah, old school linebackers were that big, 6'3", 260 or something. But like, this is a guy who can cover and get after the quarterback if he needs to. You can't go wrong with that. Yeah, overall good. I'd say good, not great.
yeah,
For the as a all around, it definitely gave Tech something to look at for the run game. I mean, I hate to say it, Georgia, we can't give up 226 yards to anybody each week.
no,
If you do, it needs to be over like 50 or 60 carries.
yeah,
Like if that's all the team does is they run the ball and you give up 200 yards and that's all the offense you give, you can live with that because there'll be no clock left after you've scored your touchdowns.
right.
So Georgia's got to fix that. But outside of that, I think you're looking at a team that's figuring it out finally. I think we're looking forward to Tech. We'll just see what happens, dude. Like I going back and look, and I just like I have no answers anymore for this football team. It just doesn't make sense why they can't just show up for 4 quarters and all of them show up.
Yeah, the consistency. That's what we talked about all year is that you don't know who's going to show up almost by the half as to if it's going to be this team or if it's going to be this team. Most of the
Hmm.
time it's this team, and it's the craziest roller coaster. You just don't know what to expect. Shout out to the one star that you missed here, Peyton Woodring, who 1 for 1 on field goals. That 53-yarder was very, very beautiful, and he hit
Hmm.
all 8 extra points. That's what kickers are supposed to do. We saw kickers miss all over the board. If you guys tune in to Hootie Who this week, I will tell you about one that I don't know if you could pick the ball up and put it in a more crazier spot than the opposing team kicked it against Kennesaw. And I mean, punter didn't even get any work. That's how good the offense was. And I got to kind of pose this because of what you've been saying, and I've been kind of agreeing with was that Beck needed to be woke up, and that Bobo was what was keeping him back. I kind of think this week, I think Bobo is what actually woke Carson Beck up somehow. I don't know if it was a play call or what
I don't
happened, but
know.
I actually got to give Bobo a little bit of credit
Mhm.
for the way Carson played.
Bobo put his guys in a position to succeed, not the position. I still don't think he's doing good enough at
Right.
that job. I mean, there's still a lot of room for improvement. Too many slow starts this year. Like I said, honestly, coming into the Tech game, I think the Tech game is where we find out what we're really made of.
Yeah.
Because if we come out like we have the past 2 weeks on offense, because in the Tennessee game, outside of those first two drives, Georgia was lights out those next five. Like Georgia played Georgia football. If we do this against Tech, I think it's the giant finally is woken up from its nap that it's having, and Georgia will be doing what it needs to do. Like I said, formations were called, were beautiful.
Yeah.
They're hitting Tech at the right time. I mean, Tech, their last their last 5 games, they have won 3 of them by a grand total, what, 13 points in their last 3 games they've won, and they've lost in blowout fashion the other two.
In all fairness, and we'll get to more on this later. In all fairness, their starting quarterback Haynes King has not played a complete game in over a month. He has played bits and pieces. They've been going with a 2 to 3 quarterback system the last 3 weeks, and he missed a couple of those that were the blowouts. So he's the pivot point for their offense.
And that's a good thing. So that's why I mentioned that Georgia's run defense. Georgia has a good run defense,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not great right now.
No.
So that being said, Georgia has got to figure out the run game, the stop, as long as the players are waking up. And if I'm Kirby and those guys come out flat, I'm yanking bodies and saying, "Stand by me. Go stand by
Oh
your
yeah.
coach." And I'm putting in a freshman and going, "Don't screw up. And if you do, we're gonna talk through it." Because
Yep.
at this point, those backups are hungrier than the starters. This is where this is where you miss the former Bulldog Johnson, Bob Johnson, that's his nickname. Linebacker. He was a senior leader, a voice. Like he went to Kentucky. Like Georgia, any team needs a senior or someone who's been through the fires, who understands what they have to do to be back there and call the shots and tell this guys, hey, you're screwing up. Here's what you're doing wrong. Let me get you lined up. Let me help you. Like you need senior leadership to get through the tough times. Georgia doesn't have that on either side of the ball. Carson's good, but Carson's not a leader. He's not that kind. He's more of a go with the flow within the system. He's not
Yeah.
a fiery, I'm just going to go get will my guys to a victory. He's chill, like almost too chill. Like Stetson may not have been the favorite in the room by any state. Like his own players didn't exactly love him,
Yeah.
but he was fiery. And then he had Cedric Van Pran and the offensive line in front of him that were pushing to win. Like you had guys that were being vocal, calling each other out when they screwed up.
Yeah.
There's no one doing that. There's no accountability this year. Maybe someone shows up the next few weeks and finds their voice. Tate Ratledge definitely helps with that regard, but not enough. So
Right.
Georgia's got to figure that stuff out going forward. It's you ain't gonna win a title unless you got someone barking orders and calling things out and saying, "Coach, let me handle this. I got you."
And you can't give up 21 points to UMass, because if that defense shows up this week, and we're about to transition into the Georgia versus Georgia Tech talk, Georgia Tech will score 35 or 40 points on that defense. If the same one that
Hmm.
gave up 21 points, they'll score 40 on you because they can.
Yeah, and like I said, that's where I'm hoping Georgia wakes up and plays full 4 quarters of football.
Sure. So let's get into it. The matchup versus Georgia Tech, for about half this year, majority of Bulldog fans have brushed this game aside, and for about 2/3 of this year, whether it be this show or the other show, or even away from here, anytime I've talked to a Georgia fan, I was like, you better keep your eye on those guys at Bobby Dodd. Even though you're not
Hmm.
playing there, you're playing up in Athens. Better keep an eye on those on the varsity varmints there, because they're a weird matchup against UGA, and they were gaining steam, and now it looks like Haynes King's going to play a lot more of a game than he normally does. They're gonna give Georgia everything they can, all kinds of fits, and they're going to hope that same defense goes up, because, like I said, they can hang 40 points on you if you play like that.
Yeah, they will run it down your throat. I mean, they're not going to throw the ball around like other teams are. So that being said,
They don't
Georgia
need to.
has to be. They don't need to. Georgia just needs to be prepared to play 4 quarters of lineup and across the man in front of you and make a
Sure.
play. I'm hoping that we can do this. If I'm Georgia, I'm definitely trying to keep Tech off. I hope the Georgia's run game can take off, because if you can keep Tech from being on the field, that'll help out shorten the game and make it easier.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's honestly a good matchup for Georgia. I think this is a kind of game that Georgia should win without too much issue. I think Tech will get a touchdown or two easily, but that'll be long, hard drives. I hope Georgia is in position to not allow the 68-yard run, and we can drag this game out for for Tech and make them earn those points so they're exhausted. Yeah, your defense gets tired too, but hey, that's why we have depth. That's why we have young guys who are hungry. They proved in that last game that they're ready for their shot to spawn and to shine,
Sure.
excuse me. So I think this could be a good game going forward into the SEC title game that Georgia backed into and the playoffs because a win here basically cements a playoff berth even if you don't win the SEC title.
I agree, and I was going to bring that up. Is that I think I brought up earlier, brought up maybe last week. Is do you actually want to be in the SEC title game? Because if you come up short again in the SEC title game, even though you're not going to play Alabama, so that's going to help the Dogs a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of times when you've lost that, you've given the committee a reason to go, oh, that's unfortunate. Where'd they go?
Yeah, that was the case with the four seeds. Looked earlier and I did notice that they said that, like if Georgia wins out, if they're like the three seed, lose the SEC title game, they were like the fifth or sixth seed at that point. And if
Okay.
they lost
I
both
think,
games, or if
yeah,
they won it's all contingent. Like if they won the Georgia Tech game, missed out on the SEC title game, they were the 10th or 11th seed. So either way, like you basically went out with the two losses, you're in the playoff because then it's like, well, I already lost three. Everyone's gonna go, well, Bama should get in over y'all or Tennessee should get in. Who's
neither
had
one of
the, at
those.
that
No.
point? No, who's had the tougher schedule? Who's only lost on the road? Tough environments. Ole Miss is a tough environment. Bama's a tough environment. But yet we went to manhandle. We didn't manhandle, but we handled Texas. And we took care of business with Florida. We took care of business with Tennessee. Yes, some of these games are home games, but Georgia's proven that they can go play anybody and square up. If SEC is not the easiest place to go week in and week out, you're going to struggle.
Right.
So this year's proven it. I saw Bama go down. I saw Ole Miss go down. I was like, what is happening in this state? What in the wide world of Mark Richt has gone on?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I'm trying to look up a stat on a Georgia Tech guy, and it's not okay. Cool. Finally, it told me. Yeah, Tech is going to try to run it. They're going to try to run it a lot because that's what they're really good at. They probably have the first or second best offensive line in the ACC.
Mm-hmm.
They might have a top five, top seven in all of college. Is I would put them against a lot of other teams. That's really where Brent Key has built the nucleus of this team. Yeah, he went out and got Haynes King out of the transfer portal. That's working out really well. Yeah, he's got Chris Winkie working with him, who I still say UGA should go snatch him up somehow. But he went and he said, you know what? I played in the trenches. That's where I'm going to build this. And so the offensive line and the defensive line for Tech are two of their three biggest strengths. And that's how they're winning games. They're pushing you around up front. And
Mm-hmm.
if they start doing that against UGA, that's going to be where the issue is because this Tech defensive line can push the UGA offensive line around and they're going to put pressure on Carson. And we've already seen he doesn't do very well under pressure.
Sometimes, I mean, the Ole Miss game was something else. I think he did better the last two games when there was pressure. You saw him get out and run. I think that's helped. I think he's actually not afraid to take the ball and run with it. So I don't know what's going
Mm-hmm.
on there and why that's changed, but I'm glad to see it. I, I mean, I agree. I don't disagree with you that Tech can get up there and push you around, but there's not many teams out there that line up with Georgia on the trenches, offensively or defensively. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not knocking it, but I'm saying like outside of Ohio State and Oregon, I don't think anyone else really matches in the trenches because Georgia has the depth, the size, and the talent there that most teams are envious of getting, like having two of
The
those
depth.
guys.
Depth is
Georgia's
the big
got them
word there.
across the board. So I honestly think that while Tech can push the defensive line around at times, but as long as Georgia can keep their eye discipline go in place and don't allow too many and keep the gap sound, which we've seen them do that against Tennessee. We saw them do it with other, Ole Miss had to throw the ball to really do some stuff. They had a few runs, but like for the most part, Georgia is always predicated on stopping the run. The one thing Tech does, so as long as Georgia doesn't get sucked into too many play action throws over their head and doesn't allow those big 50-yard runs, I don't think you're going to see this game being super close. And Georgia should manhandle them if they get the chance. They should be able to.
Should in general, but the one I wanted to look up was I know the top receiver I know he's not the one that has or
Eric
probably the
Singleton.
biggest stat. Oh, yeah, there he does. Yeah, Eric Singleton Jr. I knew he was from Douglas County. I was trying to figure out what school he went to. The pride of Alexander High School.
Mm.
Eric Singleton. Him and Rutherford, but mainly Singleton. If they are having trouble getting the ball out to him down the field, they love to run these jet sweeps and reverses with him, and he is explosive when you give him a head start. And
Oh, he is.
it's
Georgia tried to land him out of the portal. He went into the
yeah,
portal, talked to Georgia, and Georgia Tech offered the bag. It's the only reason he stayed. I don't think Georgia would have used him the right way because
right.
it's very clear that we don't know how to use our best player. Hey, what can you know?
You don't.
So
But I
there's some
mean,
Bobo again.
they've got people. I mean, the Chris Lanes and the Stocktons and the Boyds are there as the supplemental, people for Tech. You just and you also have to watch, like, the game's over one way or the other if Zach Pyron comes in at quarterback, because he has basically been demoted to third string nowadays. So that means it is out of reach, good or bad.
Yeah,
Aaron Philo has taken over the number 2 spot, and you will see him and Haynes King kind of flip flop back and forth. I think part of it is when King gets dinged up, or when they want to put in a certain package, they'll let Philo come in and run 6, 8, 10 plays sometimes, or a certain drive, and then they're already getting in Haynes King's head, like, hey, okay, you see where he's doing this? We're going to have you zag after he's zigged this whole time. And they actually make the 2 quarterback system work. They tried
yeah,
the 3 quarterback system, and Pyron is just he's he needed to be flushed out, just like the other guy that went to Georgia State, who I think started 1 or 2 games for Georgia State. He should have went over there and took that job, and he didn't. The other Zach, I forgot his name, but in this case, they're basically just waiting on Pyron to graduate himself out. Philo's going to take over as the backup next year, and this team's going to just get better because they're not going to lose a whole lot.
yeah. I mean, Tech will be entertaining. I've watched some like they have fight in them, and I'll give them that.
Yeah.
Like they've looked good. That game against Miami proved that like they're not. They always play Georgia tough. They've been playing them tougher since they've changed from the old wing T. They've changed. Um, Key hates Georgia that much. Like Kirby hates South Carolina, like he
Hmm.
hates Tennessee, like he hates Alabama, like he hates Florida. I get it. That's your right. That's your rival. Georgia has won what 6, 7 in a row at this point. They've won
I
all
think
but
so.
Kirby's first year that they've won.
Yeah.
So I can tell you, Kirby hearing that coach is giving Georgia bulletin board material, and if Georgia gets off the
Hmm.
bus with their swagger and that attitude, it could be a bloodbath if Georgia wants it to be, or it could be a lot closer than it should be.
Yeah.
But that's why I kind of like, what's the spread on this game?
Let me get off the it.
Right now Georgia's at
Ooh,
19 and a
19
half.
and a half. Man,
That's
you want to kick my
honestly
dog while you're here?
that sounds about right. I mean, let's
Mm,
be honest. Like looking at if
I think it's
Georgia, if
high. Not
what's
much,
that?
but it's high.
It's
If you
high.
had said 14 or 15, I'd say, okay, I give you 2 touchdowns, but that's
That
almost
they're
three
really
touchdowns.
confident.
That
Like Carson, if Carson
mm,
could go out there and hit the deep ball and do what they did the last week, like if they literally run that kind of plays, uh, Georgia could
I
score
think
40.
I think this is part also Vegas trying to get some money on the side they don't think they were going to get money on.
Fair enough.
I think it's just a tad high. Like I said, you say 14, 14 and a half, 15. I give you that as a
Yeah, I mean,
spread.
Georgia would be happy to walk out of here with a 34-20, 31-17 win, like always. But I honestly think I'm going on a limb, and if Georgia has the game they had against UMass, I honestly think you have a similar, not quite the same score, but I think Georgia drops at least 40 and only gives up 20 or less. If Georgia comes out and
Well, the
plays
uh,
defensive football,
the over under is 53 and a half. I think that's the way we're talking. You got to take the over regardless if you're going to bet that line, because these 2 teams are going to combine for over 54 points.
that means we're got a 10-7 game incoming.
I was about to say Tech will take a 10-9 game all day long as they win. They could
Yeah.
care less about running up a
Oh,
score because they're not in
Kirby
position where
would
that
take
matters.
that game too, as long as, yeah, Kirby will take that kind of game too if his team wins and if That's all this like if it was pouring down rain Friday night, we're talking hurricane, monsoon, and all we could do is run. But honestly, Georgia's running game is looking good, and if we can open those holes, Frazier is going to take it to the house. And speaking on that note, I'm hearing Roderick Robinson's going to be back for the first time this year. 6'1",
That could
230 pounds. He was down to like Rocky, like Sylvester Stallone body fat numbers during filming
wow.
Rocky 4. When he was apparently in practices. Now, I don't know how much I believe it because they haven't been translating, unfortunately. But the way I look at it is, if he's out there with his speed, he was outrunning our defense in spring and fall practice, making plays out of the backfield and catching it. Him and Frazier is lightning and thunder.
So
So
real quickly before I get into my pick for the game, the SEC title game is going to be Texas UGA.
you know what? I honestly wouldn't be shocked if Texas A&M somehow pulls that out. I don't think so, but you
That's
never
true. They
know.
would have to win that game. Okay.
Texas
And
has
if
to
they
win, so
do,
it's the
they
winner.
would make a virtual tie between Texas, Texas A&M, UGA, and Tennessee. And
Georgia owns the
UGA,
tiebreaker. They own the
I was about to
tiebreaker
say
over
it would be
Tennessee and
at that
Texas.
point it would be UGA versus Tennessee
No, yeah,
because
actually Tennessee's
it would
eliminated.
drop Texas it would drop Texas down and A&M's under all of them.
They said A&M's in. So if Texas A&M wins, they're in. One of the Texas
Okay.
teams guaranteed. Yeah,
Okay.
Tennessee's out of it
Oh,
because of
Tennessee's out.
Tennessee's out because of I forget
Oh yeah,
exactly what it was, but
tiebreakers I think
tiebreakers
because
and
I think they've
stuff.
lost to all three or at least two of those teams.
They lost to Georgia, so that guaranteed Georgia's spot. They lost to
I think
Arkansas.
Texas beat them maybe,
Texas did not play them.
but either way. So you got Georgia. Man, I've been thinking about this game for probably the last 6 weeks because there's that's just you see both trains colliding for each other. Um, I think it is in the trenches where things are going to be decided. And if Tech can get the run game going early, then I think they can pop up some points really early and make UGA do what they've done majority of the year and play catch up in the second half, which they're quite good at. I do think Bobo has woken up Carson Beck a little bit, or he's at least poked him. And now that the Bears loose, we'll see what he can do. And I would love to see a great game out of him. If it comes down to kickers, between Aiden Burr and Woodring, I would love to see them just have a kickoff because it would probably start at the 50 and move back from there. Uh, I think this one becomes a lot closer than people really want it to be. I think you're looking, I don't know, 37-38, something like that as far as the winner. I think it could even be 40-35,
Yeah,
something like that. It's going to be pretty high up there. I'll say 37 is a weird number, but I will say like better yet, 35-31. I think the Techies pull this one off. I just I think as much as I want UGA to play 4 solid quarters, I think this loss is going to light their fire. To quote Jim Morrison, it's going to light their fire to a point to where whoever they play in the SEC title game might as well just stay home because they are going to get smoked by Georgia in the SEC
yeah.
title game.
I'm gonna go with this one. I think Georgia wins by about 3 scores. I'm gonna go ahead and pick a 42-21
Okay.
because if I honestly, I think this is the game that where the offense shows up, the defense shows up because they've played down to teams they felt they should play down to. I know Kirby don't like it. I think that's the players, but I think Kirby has enough fuel under their butts to light that fire. He will be screaming and yelling at them. Practice is not going to be easy this week. Yeah, it's the day after, it's a Friday night game, a little
Yeah.
different than normal, but it is at home. Rumors of that this week they actually just when they're breaking out the black uniforms. I doubt that happens.
Not for
But
this
I think Georgia
title
wins
game.
this one. But I know we got to hop off, so I think Georgia
Yep.
wins.
Well, there you go. I got Tech. He's got Georgia. This has been Hunkered Down. He's Jake. I'm Jerry.